Yes, thank you. The meeting is right on record now. So, in a moment, I'm sharing my screen. Then we move straight away to where we left off the last class. The last session, still on our discovery for people managers series on data capability building for business leaders, human resource professionals, and as many interested individuals as possible. So right here, I've got the curriculum we've been following all along, and so far so good. We've exhausted the first four modules of the curriculum, which is right here, data analytics project itself. Then we did a couple of projects under that. Then for module 2, we had reasons to uh, visit the basics of data analytics, especially starting with the use of Excel, because as at the time we got to build this particular dashboard you are seeing on the screen, uh, a couple of cases came up, and the request was around, okay, how do we ensure we are able to take advantage of all the available features in Excel to build dashboards themselves. And when those needs arise, how would they be able to dynamically adjust if it is slightly different from what procedure was being taught during the section? So we had to go back to deal with each of the basics of arriving at a dashboard as good as this, even better than this. And to do that, we have to visit a comprehensive curriculum which we are currently running, and here is it. So we started with this module 1, module 2, then module 3, moved deeper into data cleaning, preparing data, and what have you. Then module 4, we have extensively dealt with data calculation in Excel, formatting, and what have you, up to the use of pivot table, which we are going to slightly touch on today and finalize. We started that last session, and today also we'll be able to move straight into the use of statistics in Excel, after which hopefully by next session we go straight away into introduction to relational databases and SQL, which is structured query language, and we'll dwell a bit on that uh, during module 6 and module 7. In module 7, we still go further into structured queries using SQL. And after that, we'll move to Tableau. So we are almost moving to the end of the entire curriculum we have set. So because module 9 is more like some theoretical uh, guidance and principles that has to necessarily be brought to the attention of people dealing with data, which has to do with ethics, bias, governance, and what have you, which is one of the hallmark or those things that underpin discovery for people managers itself. Because one of the gap we want to plug with the use of workforce analytics adoption gap is the fact that the governance level uh, lacuna is widening as investment in infrastructure is increasing across organizations. And as we are moving more into the use of artificial intelligence, it's going to be a bit worse if structure is not put in place as to how the entire organization, not necessarily people in communication or in IT as it were, the entire organization, people who have got to deal with data, and all workers have got to do that with data. And this will place more pressure on the human resource and whatever level of department which is in charge of workers. And that is why this is even more for people managing people and people getting people to follow compliance and what have you in terms of the use of data. And after which, by module 10, we'll move to data analytics data analytics projects and what have you. So, in the last session we were here, we were on pivot table, and for pivot table, we've been able to, we've been able to create pivot table, revising and refining pivot table, and creating pivot charts. So you first arrive at your pivot table, then from pivot table, you can bring up your chart. An example is what we have here. And we could also see the data. This is data upon which the pivot table here was created. And here is the pivot chart. And like it was mentioned, that session, we can always tweak around our pivot table and pivot chart. We can always manipulate what we want to view, what we want to analyze, what we want to remove. All sort of adjustments can be done, because the moment you know what exactly to do and how to work around it, you can just get it done. For instance, on this simple one that I have right here, let me increase the font, the size a bit. Yeah, coming down this way. So you just come to your pivot chart field right on the right side of the screen. It shows it. The moment you click away from it, it disappears. But if you want it to reappear, just click on the pivot table itself. It will reappear. So I can move around here. If I feel I need to add another column from the data, don't forget the data is as wide as this, but we have just picked few columns to analyze. And just like we know that pivot table helps us to summarize, to analyze, to evaluate a particular large set of data, you just want to view a portion of it and quickly derive insight. That's exactly what pivot is about. Pivot is more like standing for the word summary. Okay, I have this data as large as this. It looks so large. I cannot immediately make sense out of it, but there are a few things I want to do. Do I have to be going through this data all along? That's exactly the brain behind the creation of pivot tables. So you can just quickly create a pivot table right from this data set. It's either you click on it this way, click on insert, and you see your pivot table on the left. All this was demonstrated in the last session. And on landing at your pivot table, you have it here. You can still tweak around it, pick any column that you have not picked before that you now think you need. The moment you do that, your table increases, then the chart also changes, because the chart is querying from the table, from the pivot table you have done. So if you do not want that, you can also just unselect this and you can move things around. Don't forget, these are the 4 quadrants that are here. We have the filter standing, and that is why on the chart, every pivot table chart, you necessarily do not see again a tool right here that is filtering. Normally, when we do charts in Excel, we have these 3 tools here. One more like talking about the chart styles, and probably you want to paint, blah blah blah. Then the second one gives you more in-depth adjustments on the chart itself. Then the third one is always a filtering tool. But for pivot table, the chart does not contain that. I will show you in another chart I will bring up on another data set, not necessarily from pivot table. So pivot table does not have that filtering tool again, because already on the pivot table field, filtering tool is there, and it's one of the 4 quadrants. It is right here. That's the filter you are seeing here. So all the filtering you want to do can be done right here. That is why it's no longer available on these charts. It's available in every other chart you create from a data set, not necessarily going through pivot table. But by the time you are going through pivot table already provide you the filters here, so you can do all your filtering right here. So I can drag any of the columns right here on top in this place. All the things you see here are representing the columns in the main data sets. So the filter is already here. That's why it's no longer by the side of this chart. I will show you in another chart I will do, as you will see a filter appearing as the third icon right on the chart. So what else can I do? I can say that, okay, this column country that is the legend side, which is standing more like the column side. So I can bring it down here to row. Then you can see the table changes. That is how much you can do around pivot table when what you want to visualize is not showing too readily for you to be able to make sense out of the table. You can move the element around just to see. Most of the time, you move it around between the column quadrants and the row quadrants. And of course, the values shows here depending on what dynamism is involved in that stuff. So as soon as I move this column country right from column, yes, right from the column side to row side, you can see what I have. Then if I move it back here, the table changes here. So you can collapse this guy such that it doesn't appear that way any longer, and I can expand it. Okay, the adult from 35 years to 64 years, what countries are involved? Does it contain the adults age range, young adult 25 to 34, what countries are involved? I can just expand it and this way, and you can collapse it to just like it was before. So those are the different lot of stuffs you can do around pivot table. um Yep, around pivot table, and you can remove, you can add till it gives you the kind of summary that you want to quickly figure out. So if what I'm having here is not the column you want to analyze, you can pick any column at all that, okay, I want to analyze. I just want to see, okay, I want to see the profit, I want to see the revenue, or I want to see the profit against costs, things like that. You can easily just check them right here. um, because let's say unit costs, you have the profit. Yes, the profits. Can you see? So you just pick those guys that way, and they reflect straight away on the pivot table and the charts. Then you can figure out, okay, how many countries are involved here? What is the total for the quantity? What is the total cost against the total profit that is being generated over time? Or I just want to see just for that age group and all that. All sort of different insights can be drawn right from here without necessarily having to sit down on the large data set itself. Pivot table helps you to break it or sub-break it or sub-categorize it, and you can just move ahead to deal with different things you want to deal with on it. Later on, we will still deal with more charts, but this is for pivot table, and it comes with its own chart. We call it pivot chart. The moment you click on pivot table itself, this way you are able to figure out where to pick a pivot chart. You click on the pivot table, click on pivot table analyze on the ribbon, then check down on the sub menu of the ribbon. Look towards your right, you will see the tools called pivot chart, where I pick this from, and I can walk around this chart and dress it as any way I want it until it gives me what I feel is good. So those are the very critical functions pivot table perform for us. Then after pivot table, then that concludes module 4. We can then move to module 5 today. So for module 5, we are going into statistics, and statistics is very, very critical and crucial for data analytics. In fact, more often than not, you cannot see a data analyst that will not understand statistics, and there is no big deal in statistics as it were. Statistics is very, very essential, even though a lot of people who run away from numbers or who do not co-occur very well with numbers uh, consider statistics as something maybe abstract or difficult, but it is as real as every other um, physical things that you can easily touch. It gives you the quick summary of what you are dealing with at any point in time, and it helps a lot. So, the burden of analysis of data for data analysts rests in ability to break down statistics and be more familiar with different statistics tools and analysis. So that is why we will necessarily quickly brush up on statistics. And we've been doing it already previously on the different calculations we have made on Excel and the use of different functions, the use of different formulas. We have spoken at different times about statistics unknown to us because a number of things we have done, a number of the functions we called, for instance, average, max, mean, and a few other things that we did, they are equally statistics tools and features that we have done indirectly, which Excel has taken into itself as function or any other feature in that Excel application. But we'll go more into it as we progress in today's section. So that is the brief intro about statistics. As a data person or somebody breaking into data or as a people manager, you can run away from statistics because it helps you do your work better with undisputable facts that is available in data, because statistics is simply about manipulation of data. I'll get into the science of data in a short while. So under this analysis of data using statistics, what are the key objectives we intend to achieve? We want to ensure, number one, that we know how to use statistics to interpret data. We want to ensure that choosing the right visualization becomes very easy. As soon as we are now done with data preparation, data cleaning, and the data is now ready to be subjected to analysis, we want to be sure that we are confident enough to uh, choose the most appropriate visualization chart for that particular data, because the kind of chart you choose to represent your data for people to view also matters, because the reason we are using chart for visualization in the first place is to help lay people or a common person seeing your dashboard and understanding almost immediately what the chart or the dashboard is talking about, and they just have a few questions to drill down on the dashboard. For instance, if I display this dashboard to somebody who is seeing, I've carefully chosen different charts to represent different aspects of the analysis, and they were deliberate. I have used column bar charts, I have used pie chart, I have used clustered column, I have used a number of different charts appropriately to display the different calculations that were made in different subcategory in this particular dashboard, and they are all representing effectively well what is to be seen in that place without too much. Just at a glance, you can figure out what is happening in each of the section here. Which one is the lowest? Which one is the highest? Which one is in the middle? Which is talking about what is, because of the appropriate selection of the right chart that makes that simple for an average maybe non-technical person to see and be able to say, okay, this is what this means. And they can quickly understand the entire dashboard and ask question, or it will hate them to ask better question because they can understand what that thing is talking about. So it's easy for them to start asking questions around those things if they have any clarification. So those are the very important reason why chart is very good. And the third objective for these statistics we are going into now is to ensure we also know, of course, how to create the visualization itself. Number one is to know what is the right one to use. Then number two is to know After being able to select the right one, then there are a couple of adjustments you make around it. You want to remove grid lines, you want to remove some of the legend, you want to just make the chart as clean as possible, because what you are seeing here on this chart is not how it appears in its raw form. Work has been done on each of these charts to make it as clean as this, so that what is not needed for anybody to be seen that will make the whole thing more confused or more confusing and more complex has already been removed. It's been cleaned well, and it is only what is needed to communicate the data behind it that was used. So that's another very simple skill that is required from analysts to make sure what they are doing is as direct to the point as possible. Then what other point of objective? We want to ensure we also address anomalies in data and also address data issue as far as that Excel application is concerned. Having said that, let's go back straight into these statistics. What is it about? It is not anything new to anybody, that's sure. And it is not something most of us haven't heard before, but do we really underscore the importance of statistics back then when we are dealing with small data, talking about mean, median, mode, and what have you? So we just brush about it today. So statistics in general is the science of learning from data, an ability to pick up a couple of information or insight from data. You are simply under the phenomenon called statistics, or under the concept called statistics. And it is about measuring, it's about controlling, it's about communicating uncertainty with data. So it is also called a branch of mathematics. So statistics is a branch of mathematics, and probably that is why people who do not, who are not friendly with mathematics are probably also not friendly with statistics. But all that will be taken care of, because there is nothing so much about all of those things. In fact, the best things you can familiarize yourself with and you are sure you are getting it per time is the science of numbers called mathematics. So just as statistics is called the science of learning from data, the science of numbers itself is what we call mathematics. So statistics is now a branch of mathematics that uh, helps us to break down the details of how to derive information from a trend or what you call a pattern. So, an ability to derive insight from something that looks like a reoccurring event or a reoccurring phenomenon. That ability is what we call statistics, because statistics will be able to help you put your hand around that thing and figure it. And that's exactly the cross of the work of an analyst, for you to cite or observe what is constituting a trend, and that could be a major factor affecting a particular business line or business unit in an organization, which requires immediate managerial attention, or else it will keep damaging things silently without them knowing. Those things could have been happening in the course of their day-to-day activities, but they do not see it. But data is now showing that trend. So ability to pick it through data using statistics, flagging it or raising it as a red flag, trying to understand what is the causative agent behind it and informing people who are in charge accordingly is the best thing that can happen to anybody that is looking into data. And you are not expected to just look into data with your bare hair eyes. There are tools in place to help you look into the data, and they will help give you some insight into what the data is saying. One of those tools is statistics that we are dealing with today. So, in analytics, statistics are generally used to identify relationship between variables. Yes, relationship between variables. It could be a regression relationship. It could be a correlation or what have you. But you just must be able to spot relationship. What is driving sales? in the first 3 months of the year in the last 3 years, such that immediately after the first quarter is gone, there is a drop in the second quarter. And it has been occurring like that in the last 3 years. But it may not be apparent to somebody who is not looking at data. It may never, they will never even know that such a thing is occurring, especially if at the end of the year, the annual revenue is not too different year on year. They may not know that there are issues that are reoccurring every year that is actually driving the annual revenue. Whereas other months or other quarters are not necessarily contributory in the same degree as other quarters, but they will not know. What they just see that, okay, we did well last year. This year too, we did like that and maybe slightly above it. So to a layman, nothing was wrong. Do you know which month actually contributes the most? Do you know which quarter actually contributes the most to that annual revenue? The annual expenditures, do you know what quarters? Is it quarter one, two, three, or four that contribute more? Okay, why is it that we are having this second quarter giving us more expenses in the last 5 years? Those things we are spending on, are they things we readily know and they are annual recurring expenditure or what have you? If it is good, if not, then it will drag your attention to it and address it. Is it that there is a particular quarter every year that people do some things that we don't know? Maybe it is when managers go on retreat or the CEO goes on sabbatical and things just happen and they just think all is well. So those are the things data will bring to your attention, and statistics, for instance, will help you highlight that all the more. Okay, so that is statistics. Then population. What is population? Because we'll be dealing with these three phenomenons I've written down here. So a population is a group of similar entities such as people. It could be objects, it could be events, and these objects, people, or events necessarily they share what we call common features or common characteristics. And for a particular type of statistics, you are expected to study the entire population before you can make any summarization or summary or evaluation or any suggestion about the data sets. But as data sets and population keep expanding, or instances and projects keep expanding, such that if you have a project in mind based on the question that first came into your mind in the first place, and where your data lies is a very, very huge and vast population. So, gone are the days that you would have to study that entire population before you can make some adjustment or some suggestions about that particular data set, even though that particular process is still in place till date. But an advancement has been made in the field of statistics such that you do not necessarily have to study an entire population before you can work on that particular population and derive some insight from it, because a lot of time population is extremely large. You are talking about thousands, some running to millions of population elements. You don't necessarily have to go through all of them before you can do something, even though that was how analysis started. It has to be read in the entire population. But as population started growing and getting out of hand, better insight came as a result of research, and what we call a chunk of the population or a fraction of the population is now considered also appropriate to be studied, and you can make sense out of it and generalize what you have derived as insight from that simple little fraction to the entire population, and without necessarily studying the entire population. Meaning that if I have a particular research to conduct and my population runs to up to 1 million people, and I want to do a gathering of primary data, I do not need to do what we call survey and print a questionnaire for 1 million people. That is going to be it's not going to be cost effective. It's going to gulp so much resources, and it's going to be time taking. Even though it will give you a very large data, but the truth is the cost outweighs the benefit. So what else is now the better solution is the discovery of what we call sample. So sample is a randomized selection of a portion of the population you intend to study, and it is carefully chosen such that it is representative of the entire population. And that is where the primary work and the most important work is. Now that you cannot study the entire population because it's so large and so vast and so wide and all that, you need to take a sample. How do you get your sample? How do you draw out your sample such that that sample represents the entire population, however large it is? So the best way is, say for instance, um, you want to study a town, and let's say the town is a place called, uh, let's say Gilliam as a town. And in Gilliam, let's say the population over there is, let's say, 15,000 people. And 15,000 people, I have a question that is taking me into a project and a research that I want to do in that particular town. And of course, that is my population. Do I need to study that entire population? Not necessarily. Again, you don't need to do that. Okay, I want to do a sample. Okay, how will I do my sample? Will I go to street A and street B alone and just distribute my questionnaire to those people? Then I use their responses and assume that it is representing the entire town called Gilliam. That is not. You have to pick your sample such that it is representative of the entire entire place called Gilliam. How do I do that? Okay, do I move from street A? Let's say the streets in there are up to 500 streets. Do I move from street 1 to the 500th street and I pick just small number of people to fill my questionnaire? That's also too cumbersome. You cannot necessarily do that. How do you move from one street to another and it's numbering up to 300, 400, 500? It's still going to gulp resources and all that. What other way can I use? In that place called Gilliam, there are places we call public places where people from almost all part of Gilliam converge for one reason or the other. So those are places you go because when you are there, people coming in and out of that place, they don't come from the streets beside that particular location alone. They must have come from several aspects, several number of streets in the same Gilliam. An example is the Gilliam Stadium. People in the stadium can never be people whose street is just by the side of the stadium, because stadium is a relaxation center and it's where sporting activities take place, and a lot of people love sporting activities. They must have come from several streets all around Gilliam and even beyond Gilliam. So when you go to such a spot and distribute your questionnaire and people, you encourage people to fill, you would have succeeded in gathering responses from different people from different streets in Gilliam. Of course, if the population is 15,000, like I said, you can just do some little calculation using some of the formulas we have to know, okay, what is the barest minimum number I must interview? And it could be up to, let's say, 500 out of 15,000. It could be up to 1,000. So where will I get this 1,000? Will I go to each of the streets, numbering up to 500, and be picking 2 or 3 people randomly? That is an option, but it's a very cumbersome option. It means you have to go as far as from number 1 street to 500 streets. But you can just go to a place where people from all of those places converge and distribute your questionnaire, and you are damn sure that you would have been getting opinion from a lot of people all across the entire town called Gilliam. And same thing goes for religious centers. It could be in churches area, in that area. It could be from mosques. It could even be in the market square. You can go to the high street. People in high street are not necessarily people whose street is beside high street. Everybody want to eat. So a lot of people residing in close streets or distant streets always find their way to high street to buy one or two things. So if you succeed in getting them to fill your survey, you would have equally gotten opinion from people representing that particular town. And that is how to make your sample as representative of the entire population as much as possible. So um, that is for that. Then in statistics, there are two definite branches, and they are called descriptive statistics and also inferential statistics. I have made mention of one of them in passing earlier, and that was descriptive statistics. So, descriptive statistics is just an attempt to describe a particular data set and pick up a couple of features or characteristics out of that data set. More often than not, descriptive statistics can only be used to describe what is contained in that data set alone. It can never be used to to make information about another data set entirely. How do I mean? In descriptive statistics, you are trying to say, for instance, let me give an example. You want to do a fitness test, and you have given yourself a task of monitoring your your steps for the next 10 days. You want to see how many steps you take per day. So you have already attached a smartwatch that can count the number of steps you are taking. And for your fitness text, the fitness goal is that you want to ensure that you take at least maybe 30,000 steps per day, or let's say 50,000 steps per day, depending on what the situation is. And of course, that watch will be giving you all the readings and the data each time of the day, and you are recording it daily. You want to record it for the next 10 days. And in addition to that, you probably also want to monitor your heartbeats equally for the next 10 days. So as you're putting down the data on each day right from the wristwatch, let's say the fitness goal for that person is 40,000 steps, but out of the 10 days, the person is able to just meet the goal for 6 days out of 10 days. So in statistics, you call that 60% performance because it's just 6 out of 10. And that word percentage is statistics itself. It's called descriptive statistics on that particular data. And let's say for the heart rate, you have say something like 174 beats. Yes, 174 beats per minute heart rate as the maximum for each day. And probably let's say the minimum is maybe 87 beats per minute. Mark my word very well. BPM, beats per minute. So 174 as maximum, and probably let's say 87 minimum. And for average, average can number up like say maybe 110 beats per minute. So if somebody is trying to describe that data, you cannot come and say that, okay, because that guy was only able to do or to meet his fitness goal 6 out of 10 days in terms of the number of steps already set as a target. You cannot say that because he was able to do 6 days out of 10, meeting the goal for 6 days out of 10, you cannot say that he is not healthy. That is one very critical thing about descriptive statistics, because that particular data does not necessarily say it is until you meet the 10 out of 10 days that you show you are healthy, or the heart rate, because it has a maximum of 147 and a minimum of let's say 87, that is not showing that the person is having a healthy lifestyle. No, it is just only describing what the situation is at that moment. A couple of other things are needed before a conclusion can be drawn. And conclusion in this sense, especially in science, is what we call inference. Generally, in science, what you need to do first is to conduct a test, give an observation, then you draw inference. Ability to draw inference is to make conclusion based on the data you have now that this is exactly what is happening, or to predict what could happen in the future. So because of the shortcoming of descriptive statistics, there is inability to predict the future or predict another data set outside of itself. That is what gave rise to what we call inferential statistics. And inferential statistics is, don't let me get there yet. So I can give you a couple of other points on um, descriptive, yeah, before landing on inferential. So, like I said, descriptive cannot help you to do comparison with another data set, which is another group of data set, and conclusion cannot be drawn from it. You can also hardly make predictions from descriptive statistics. So it is that shortfall or shortcoming of descriptive statistics that actually gave rise to what we call inferential statistics. And what is that? Inferential statistics is simply the process of collecting, analyzing, and interpreting data gathered from a sample, and you can generalize or predict something about a population. That leads me back to the population matter we dealt with. Okay, I don't want to deal with this entire population, but I just want to get a little sample or a fraction of the population, and I want to analyze it such that whatever I infer from it or whatever I get from it, I can generalize that insight as the representation of what is happening in the entire population. So before I could do that, like I mentioned earlier, you must have carefully selected the sample such that it is truly representative. So whatever insight you are drawing is easy to link that insight to the entire population, and also use it to predict similar occurrence in closer population or town that have similar features with the one you just analyzed. And whatever you are generalizing it to be will almost be 90 something percent correct, because they have similar features and you have taken time to analyze something similar to it using the sample that has a high level of representation of the entire population. So typically, when these analyses are being done, it's always include what we call different sampling techniques, meaning since we are not going around to work on the entire population now, we want to work on a small sample that can actually be taken care of by a small budget, and you still get the same quality and the same result. Okay, if you want to do that, there are sampling techniques that will help you arrive at the right amount of sample. Number one is to know the right number of things that must constitute your sample. In a given population of 500, how many must your sample be? Should your sample be 10%? Should it be 5%? There are techniques used to arrive at those numbers. So using those techniques, you already know that, okay, out of 500, I must at least have 10% of it. 10% of 500 is 50. And if I'm going to analyze 50, okay, where will the 50 be? Will I just go to the south or southeast part of that place and just pick my 50? Or I go to the northwest part of that place and just pick my 50? No, how do I do it? How do I ensure that the 50 I'm going to pick is representative of the entire 500? There are techniques to getting that done or arriving at that. So Before going to the second aspect of the objective, which is visualization, I may necessarily want to show. Okay, yes, the second part of my discussion here the other time when we were discussing about charts. So for this chart, this is a pivot table chart, and the twos right here on the chart are two. It's supposed to be three. Why? Because there is need for a filter. The filter isn't here on the chart because there is already a filter as one of the four quadrants right on the pivot chart field. And this is it here. So assuming I'm not using pivot table, I'm just using a regular data. Let me pick this data for instance. Yes, I just have a regular data and I just want to make just a quick sense out of the data. You can just select. I may not select the entire table because it may make my charts look too cumbersome. I just select this few. How many is it? Just from number 1 to 10 rows, including, yes, 10 rows, including the column header. So what do? I just pick my insert button. Then I have what we call chart here. On this charts menu side, I can pick recommended chart just like we did for the other one. Then it comes out this way to you, and you can pick as many as possible. Most of the time, under recommended chart, the very first one is probably the most ideal chart type that can help you display what information the data you have selected is expected to convey. And if for any reason I do not see any appealing chart that I want based on my experience, I can always pick this one, all charts, pick from all charts here. Say, for instance, I want to convert that particular data I've selected. I want to view it through a pie chart. I can pick pie charts, yes, and I can just say here. So here is it. So I go ahead to tweak it all around and make adjustments as much as possible. Now, the very first thing that led me here is to show to you that the chart is supposed to have three icons. Don't forget, for the chart we derived from the pivot table, there were two. The third one was to be the filter icon, which was already in one of the four quadrants of pivot table. So for this, it's no longer, this is not a pivot table. So it has all the icons complete. So you have the filter icon right here. So you can filter all across. Filtering is to determine what you want to show. You want to allow a couple of them to go to the background. You can just unselect a few of them and click apply. So it will reduce the number of those things. Can you see? That's already reduced. So I can unselect more such that, can you see now? Maybe I can unselect more again. It's not remaining just three. So you can tweak around all your stuff right here. I can remove one more and you see just two. And what what pie chart rather does is just to show you the fraction of the total that um, a particular factor or selection is taking. Most of the time, it uses this particular circle, which is 360 as a total in mathematics, and it now uses this as a percentage. So it's dividing these two now, showing to me that, let me see the figure is giving to me. So it's showing this 0.6 degree, then this one is a fraction of the other one. So that is just how you can pick up any charts that you want. I can choose to remove this and pick another one. Yep, insert. Then I can say, okay, should I pick this? If I don't want to pick any of the recommended, it can give me this one. It can give me, I can say it should give me more suggestion. I can pick a bar chart here. I can pick a column bar chart here. I can walk around this cluster column bar chart and I can choose to, is it this or that? I can pick any of them and click OK. Then it comes this way. The moment I feel it's not giving me what I want to, I can just come here and remove it. Okay, it's like I want to reduce one of you. One is gray. You can remove the gray one, then apply, and it remains only the orange and the blue. So you can walk around your chart as much as you want here. You can come here to the right side and do a couple of stops. Okay, it has my chart as title, so I can remove this title where it is written chart title. I can just come here to unselect my chart title. The title is gone. But more often than not, we want to leave title there. Or if you are taking it into another dashboard and you have already put a title at the head of that dashboard, so you don't need a title for it again. Just lift it, just like in this place. The title on each of the charts I brought here is no longer there because each section is already having a title describing what is being displayed in this particular section. So the chart title itself, I have removed it so that it will make the canvas look neat and you can see straight away into what is being displayed because you don't want to see all sort of things around. You don't want to see anything cluttering the whole view. So what else can you do? You can also choose to remove if there's any legend you want to remove, if there's any thing that is not making it neat. For instance, I can see grid line here. Grid line are those gray line behind these bars. Most of the time, for me, they don't make charts visually appealing. So you can choose to remove them. Just click this plus button, come down. You see something called grid line. Yeah, this is grid line. Unselect it. The moment you unselect grid line, those grid line goes. You can see the chart looks better without those line behind it because it is the bars I want to see. The customers or the people who want to take decision have no interest in those bars. So those bars give them a sensory distraction from what exactly is they're expected to look at and make sense out of. So if you feel your axis is also giving you any trouble, you can unselect it and get it out. And if you feel you want to also do some data label, okay, these bars are just here. I don't even know what figure did they represent. What is the number this one represent? They just look the same tall. And I can just come here and put data label, select data label. It will give you those figures in there. So you can see, then you can adjust the figures a bit so that it is not too large as it is just because of this data we are dealing with anyway. The numbers are a bit too large and one can adjust that back on the data, but for now this is what is given to us because of the largeness of the data itself. What else can you still do? Chart title, data label, data table is back. Yep, that's all. Then you can also change color depending on how you want it to look. When you click that second one, the style, you can adjust the color from what is it called, from orange and blue to any color that you so wish, depending on what you feel is more appealing to you or will be visually appealing. All can be worked around this way. You can equally choose yellow if you so wish, or you can choose what other color. Blue is already there, and other. So those are the different ways we can work around charts, making it give you the representation of what you actually want and a bit appealing if you so want it that way. Okay, for the remaining time, let's just see the lesson again. So, how do you choose a visually appealing chart, or how do you choose the right visualization? So good visualization make faster decision making possible because it aids understanding, and humans can process the visual images more quickly than a table containing data. For instance, imagine seeing this chart I just showed and comparing it to seeing this data. You can not easily make sense out of this data, even though it is not hard to understand. But looking at the chart can quickly communicate to you faster than the data set itself. And imagine this, and that's what pivot table is trying to achieve. Pivot table pulled out a smaller amount of data, or a summary, rather, not smaller. Pivot table summarize the entire very huge data, this so huge, it summarizes it into this smaller one, and it is now pulling out a chart for you. It is all in a bid to make it easy to quickly understand and spot or identify trend or pattern. Then you are able to ask question from the person who prepared the data or the dashboard. So finally, yeah, so complicated data including outliers. So outliers can be displayed using scatter plots. So outliers are things that are not following trend. For instance, if you are watching the sales of a particular product in a particular department, and on weekly basis, the sales is 50. The following week, I mean, it ranges between 50, either slightly above 50 or slightly below 50. So let's say week 1 is 50, week 2 is 49, week 3 is 53, week 4 is 47, week 5 is 52. You can see that is a reasonable movement, plus and minus. So it doesn't show anything is wrong. It's just the natural circumstances that makes some to be one less than the other. And those numbers I just read out, by the time you find average, you see that the average is closer to almost all of the numbers. So in such situations, there is no eyebrow to be raised. But if one week you now have 250, then there is something to look out for, because that 250 is not following pattern. It's not following trend. So we call it outlier. Then you need to start searching what exactly is responsible for this outlier. How come this week, all of a sudden, we have 250 compared to the movement around 50 we used to have on weekly basis? Then you must know, is it that there are tourists that came around that particular location and they boost or drove the sales that much that week? Is it that one of your competitors has closed shop for one holiday or the other for that entire week and they did not come? You just need to know what has driven your sales to be that high all of a sudden. Then you have to check for the happenstance that will take place in the following week. Is it going to be the usual what it used to be, or this 250 is what is going to continue? So those are things data draw your attention to easily, and it helps you to start asking very critical questions about what is going on. And this can happen not necessarily at work, it can happen anywhere, and it can happen in a particular small department or office. You just want to reason out, why is this happening compared to what used to happen? What has changed? If that if what change is positive and unprecedented, how do we encourage such change if it is positive anyway? If it is a negative thing, how do you mitigate such that it doesn't repeat itself and things can go back to normal as they used to be? At this point, we will need to draw the curtain, because it's already past 60 minutes, and for the use of recordings and ease of reference, so it's always good to have it within 60 minutes. So we will necessarily be able to continue from this point next session. Do we have any quick question, please? Thank you, Taiwo. Thank you. Any question? So if everything is well understood, then we can continue this next session, where we'll dissect more charts, and hopefully we'll be able to um, exhaust what we have under statistics. Then thereafter, we can move to structured query language, which is SQL. On that note, I would like to appreciate everybody as usual. Thank you for taking time to join today's section. Keep breaking the ground into data and in leading the people you are leading. That is the best way to lead people. You lead them by the data they produce. And how do you lead them by the data they produce if you don't have capacity to manipulate the data? You must have capacity to work around the data and make sense out of the data in the first place. So, on that note, thank you once again. See you next session. Have a wonderful